together as we continue to engage the idea of living in God's abundance. And the next presentation we are going to hear is from Reverend Alex Hoops, one of the people who has taught me that there actually is a difference between Marvel and DC Comics. And a gifted theologian from Florida who one day wound up serving in Western North Dakota. I invite you to welcome Alex Hoops, who's been wondering about why.
Yeah, thank you. Good. I don't know if I... It's funny, I just told the missionary, I go, it's like you knew what this assembly was about when you asked me to do this, because all these stories just work right along with this. He said, yeah, that's kind of what I do. He thinks so far. I don't think so far. I think about why. Why are things the way they are? It has been something I've asked a lot coming to North Dakota. Again, born, raised in Southwest Florida. And I ask a lot of why do people do this? Why is that a thing? Why, just it's helpful anyways with the lay of the land. But the questions I got immediately when I got here were, why are there cords hanging out of the front of people's cars? Really progressive in energy, right? No, not it. It's that cold. Learn that. It hurts your face. Also, why does it snow in May? That seems right. I don't get it. Why do you have community dinners that celebrate the eating of fish you've ruined? Why? Thank you. I knew there was something here. I determined it's an excuse to eat a cup of butter. And I like it. I think you're onto something. So why? Pushing why. The reason I think we as a congregation, as a church, should be pushing why is I think the question why helps us sharpen our sense of mission, helps us understand our place better, it helps understand our identity and define it. I think it gets at the heart of things. And when I think of somebody who's mastered the art of asking why, I think of my 4-year-old daughter. You know this game? Mia, it's time for bed. Why? It's time. Why? Well, you gotta rest. I don't think so. I'm all right. I feel good. Well, because we all need to rest. See, I'm getting theological now. No, she won't have it. And what happens is goes on for a while, a back and forth of whys, and it gets to this point where I regret it, but I end up saying, because I said so. That's wow. Ha! Yeah. You gotta go. I'm an adult. But Mia is on to this. My daughter, she gets it. She's like, that ain't why. What are you going to do once I go to bed? What is this? You guys have fun out here or what? And because the true answer is, I want to watch Walking Dead. It's too violent. You can't watch this. But right there, I say it as a joke, but it's also true because what asking why has done is it's forced me to consider what my true commitments are. What is the real reason why you do these things? Asking why in a congregation can be just as revealing. If we practice why in congregations, we might find ourselves saying things like, well, I mean, it is a good ministry. It is caring. It's also a long-standing tradition. Also, our why answers might reveal our deep anxieties surrounding change, surrounding a culture of scarcity. Honestly, some of us are just trying to seek survival. It may reveal that we are far from living in confidence of God's abundance. It may just reveal we don't want to break anything. So we do this. We do this again and again. The church is shifting most certainly, and with that comes anxieties. With that happening, I think it is of utmost importance that we practice the discipline of pushing why. Because regardless of climate changes in our cultures, regardless of changes in the church, our mission remains the same, right? The good news hasn't changed. He's still not in that tomb. Christ is risen. Go make disciples. Go baptize people of all nations. Seek hope, seek life, seek deliverance, seek liberation. And I think we get at those part of that when we ask why we're doing things. Be workers of the vineyard. Care for the garden. Bless the world. That's what we're made to be. So why did Jesus do these things? Why did Jesus do these things the way it was in his mission? Why did he do stuff that he did when he invited us to do the same? For what reason? We can look throughout scriptures. John 3:16, he did this to save the world. That's that thing we see, we post it everywhere, but to save the world, to baptize people of all nations, right? We were going to be people of the kingdom, people of the vineyard. We were going to seek deliverance and liberation so that all might have life and all might have it abundantly. Blessing the world. We know that about Jesus, I think. Does our congregation have that same answer? Why do we do what we do, the ways we do it? In short, pushing why will require us to go deep into our story, and it'll require us to ask ourselves, what are our hopes as a congregation? What are our hopes as a church? Do they line up with Jesus' hopes, revealed in the stories we tell and share and proclaim in our very being? Asking questions is a grand tradition of the church, starting from when Jesus was yay high. Remember the story? He's taken into Jerusalem with his family. He gets lost. They don't even realize he's gone. And they come back to like, Jesus, you scared us. Why did you do that to your parents? What were you doing? And his answer is, why were you so worried? Why were you looking for me? Didn't you know where I was? I'd be in my Father's house, right? He continues that tradition in Matthew. The Pharisees and teachers of the law come to Jesus from Jerusalem and ask, why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? They don't wash their hands before they eat. Jesus replied, why do you break the command of God for the sake of your tradition? Jesus is asked in the Matthew version of this feeding story, how are we going to feed them? How are we going to feed all these people? Jesus answered, well, what do you got? What do you have? He's not in the business of just answering questions. He's in the business of asking. And as reflections of that, we might consider doing the same. Jesus pushed why so much that long after his resurrection in the 4th century, the early church, right? They're seeing all these new people coming to this story, but none of them know the traditions of the Hebrew people. They don't know Jesus' traditions. So they come seeking, what is this about? How do we get a part of it? It seems so important, but we got to know why. And the early leaders of the church started this discipline. Instead of just pumping their heads full of information of what it means to follow Jesus, they created a catechumenic process that lasted a long time, that really opened up the opportunity to ask the questions like, why? Why do you do the things you do? Why do we celebrate the things we celebrate? Why do we have to do these things? And what happens is in the discussion, we put flesh and bones on this gospel. We give it context. We give it place. We give it purpose. Also, teachers are really blessed by this as well, because they're being asked new questions. They're being asked, line this up with your traditions, and how does it hold up still? That's a really, really interesting thing, because aren't we in a similar context with new people who we can't assume share our traditions? I didn't know what a lutefisk dinner was. You know? I didn't know a lot of stuff about North Dakota. I still don't know a lot of stuff about North Dakota. So if I misspeak, apologies. But we are also in a similar situation. We can't assume these clear understandings of traditions and teachings. So my question is then, what does our catechumenic process look like? What does our new members process look like? Do we just tell people what we do? This is what it looks like. Hop on. This is what we do. Why are they coming? Well, why are you doing this? For what reason? And we get to ask those identity questions. I want to talk about a Bible study a mentor of mine talked about. He'd been serving this congregation, a long-standing congregation, and he'd be seeing in this neighborhood a lot of 20-somethings and young folks joining this neighborhood, but very much just dipping their toes into this church water. So we started having Bible studies, and he'd leave in these Bible studies opportunities for all questions, comments, concerns, and critiques. Could be scary, right? You're really setting yourself up for some tough stuff. But he was really fed by this. They were asking great questions, again, that made him reconsider the things he held to be true, and asking them, how do I give these things life? How do I make them present here and now? And he was loving it so much that the traditional members of the church were saying, now what's going on there? You seem to just adore these interactions with these people who are seeking. He said, well, come check it out. So they came, and they were talking about the story when Jesus appears after his resurrection. He shows up, and they don't recognize him. It's only in the breaking of bread, and they go, it's Jesus. And then Jesus, God, cool. So the traditional folks go, they hear this, and he goes, now, son, what's the big question for you about this story? Why didn't the disciples recognize him? That was their question. All along the line, the new folks and the old folks, they had divided among a table. That's a bummer too, but this happens. And they had said, all of them very much the same thing. Why didn't they recognize him? They go to the other side of the table, and the other side's a little more like trouble. They go, what's Jesus up to? This is like Secret Boss or something, but way meaner. Because they thought he was dead, and he's just like, I'm going to sneak in here. You know, do you recognize him? And it's really frustrating. And he says, I'm irritated. Why did Jesus do that to them? They thought he was dead. Be nice, Jesus. Why would Jesus do that? That's their question. And they sit there for a moment, and a woman from the other side of the table goes, we had the same question. We just didn't know you could ask that in church. Why? Why is that something you can't ask in church? This is not a judgment of anybody here. This isn't a critique of the questions being asked. They're all good. This is an observation of our church culture. A culture that will not change overnight, as we're all well aware. We move at a glacial pace, but that's all right. What the 4th century early church realized, and perhaps what we need to take a firm grasp of, is that this very question, every challenge, every critique, is an invitation for the church, for God's people to enter into intentional identity discussions surrounding our context, our culture, our traditions, and our obedience. We are in a shift, but that shift has meant lots of great questions coming to our churches. Good questions from many people. I have heard them like, what is this Sunday school about, and why do we do it this way? Why should I become a member? What's baptism have to do with this? What are you all about in your church? Why do you take communion every week? Why is it once a month? Why on earth would you want me to give you money? I thought you guys had various money stuff. Why does this matter? Why should I? These are questions I've heard from people in mission moments in communities that are in flux. Like, Minot, what a neat place. I think as a church, we need to make sure we're doing the work to provide thoughtful and genuine attention to these questions. This is our responsibility. Maybe we should bring them up if you're not hearing them. Maybe ask yourselves, why do you do the things the way you do? For what purpose? For whose glory? I found pushing the why can bring groups into deeper Bible study. It can help us cultivate a shared vocabulary even. So the entire congregation can speak with confidence regarding their mission as a body of Christ. They'll be able to do so because in pushing the why, they'll have better defined their identity in this time and in this place. And with a clear identity at the heart of us, as baptized people, I think we better live as Christ hoped for us to live, as reflections of this guy that kept asking everybody bunches of questions. In daring confidence, we do this. In God's abundance, no longer stressing over, how do I get people to my church? No longer looking for the newest and best bait for new members or programs, chasing 100 different desires, 100 different models, shapes, and hopes, styles, and preferences. Instead, in pushing the why, we become a people who regularly wrestle with important questions like, who are we? What is God doing? Why is this important? Why did Jesus do this? To die on a cross for what? To convince us of what? And then living in daring confidence to those conversations. So I hope you might practice pushing why. I think it's pretty cool. I have a few questions, I guess, to follow this up. I have to say, I hope this was helpful. If not, please hear this. It's an exciting time to be church. Take courage. The tomb is absolutely empty. The Spirit is alive, and it's well. It's a great time to be church. Amen.
So, as Alex said, you get to practice pushing the why. Around your table, you are invited to think of a ministry. What is it? What does it do? So chat together with someone near you about a ministry that you want to think about together. And then why in Jesus' name does it exist in the first place? Would all members of the ministry team answer that question the same way? Would it help if you were all on the same page, if you gave the same answer? Invite you to dig in around your table, have some conversation.